Let's do it. Welcome to the Young Turks. We are at the Republican National Convention. I'd like to tell you that I'm excited, but I'm not, because nothing has happened so far. But almost, we're getting close. We did some great interviews yesterday, and we're going to start off with a great interview today. Joe Klein from Time. Joe, how are you?
Good to be here. I'm fine. I'm entertained. I'm just having a ball.
Yeah, I know. You were telling me that. How are you doing it?
Well, I just love the whole Sarah Palin story. I love it in all of its many facets, and with new facets rolling off the presses every 10 minutes, you just don't know what's going to happen next.
You know, let me ask you about this 17-year-old daughter thing. How is it off? Is it off limits? Is it on limits?
It's off limits.
It is?
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Well, it has the public policy ramifications of, abstinence only. Obviously, that didn't work. She was in favor of that. Are we allowed to ask her, hey, have you changed your mind about that?
We're allowed to ask her those questions, but I think that, I don't think it's our place to invade the kid's privacy.
Mm-hmm. No, I wouldn't ask the kid anything. And look, our position always been that people are human beings, and we should be less judgmental, not more judgmental. Right. My problem is that if the shoe was on the other foot. Jake Tapper of ABC News mentioned this as well. What if it was Obama's 17-year-old kids? You know what the conservatives would be saying. See, this liberal attitude, permissive, et cetera, it leads to it.
Well, one would hope that people of civility and civilization would be more polite than those sleazebags. I'm just disgusted by that. But there's all this other stuff that really is substantial. For example, we've now established that Sarah Palin is a tax raiser. She raised taxes on the big oil companies, and it really worked well. She raised, the sales tax when she was mayor of that, metropolis in Alaska. We also know that she's a big porker. I mean, she was in favor of the bridge to nowhere until it became obvious that it wasn't going to be built. She was in favor of all kinds of pork. She hired a lobbyist who was also connected to Jack Abramoff to lobby for Wasilla, Alaska, and got all these pork barrel projects there. So it's okay for her to be diametrically opposed to John McCain on those issues. There is only one issue that counts in the Republican Party, and that is abortion.
It is amazing. I want to get to a lot of the things you mentioned there. Let me start with the fact that I'm amazed that Wasilla, Alaska had a lobbyist. What are they doing with a town of 6,500? What are they doing with a lobbyist?
Well, that goes back to another part of this incredible story, which is that Palin's husband, and to a certain, and we don't know whether she was actually a sympathizer, but her husband was a member of the Alaskan Independence Party, AIP, which is in favor of Alaska seceding from the Union. And the reason why that's true, why that movement exists, is because so much of Alaska's oil revenues go to the U.S., go to the rest of us in taxes. And that's why Alaska has traditionally been pork central, because there's a kind of argument that we're sending you so much, you got to send us something back. And so that's why, you might. This is the stuff of high comedy. I'm sure that towns of 87 people probably have lobbyists up there.
Yeah, because
you could get anything.
I used to live in New York. I think my block had more than 6,500 people on it. So,
right.
And they don't have lobbyists. But I see why, and that's a very good explanation of why they do. So, we talked to Jonathan Alter yesterday about this taxing the oil companies, but I want to understand it a little bit better. What exactly did it mean for her to raise taxes on the oil companies? Was it the revenue split that they get for drilling rights, or was it simply just a flat-out tax on them? Hey, we're going to take...
It was tax on profits, I think. It was a windfall profits tax. I mean,
So is that the same thing as Obama's windfall profit tax?
Sounds like it. I mean, really.
And how much did she raise them? Do you recollect, Joe?
I don't know. Now, the argument is made that the taxes were unduly low because of the oil companies' extraordinary influence in Alaska, as opposed to the oil companies' extraordinary influence in the rest of the country.
Right.
I mean, this
exactly.
But it's the combination of all these things I don't think that this nomination is in any danger or anything like that. I just think that, we're all in danger of just falling off our seats laughing at this.
I mean, that's the thing here. Let's get a little broader. We're talking to Joe Klein of Time. Did John McCain vet this woman at all? Or does this seem to be one of the rashest decisions made by a presidential candidate in my memory?
Well, I think that you can make the argument, and I'm going to make the argument this week in my column, that, if the vice presidency is the first major decision that a candidate makes, and a real indication of what they're going to be like as president, we have a very conservative candidate and we have a very radical candidate. The conservative candidate's name is Barack Obama, who went through a very orderly process. He made, a very mainstream pick. It's been the mark of his candidacy throughout that he hasn't taken any real chances. He hasn't gone up against the party in any major way. And, he may be conservative almost to a fault. On the other hand, John McCain, offers a screw you pick. It just he couldn't get Joe Lieberman
and Tom Ridge.
And he didn't want, Mitt Romney. You can imagine him up in Sedona cooking his steaks and muttering, I'm not going to get that Romney guy. Who else is there? And they decide in the last week, by their own timeline. They called her on Sunday at the Alaska State Fair, and she was in Sedona on Thursday, and he made his decision right then and there. Now, do you really want to have a president who makes major decisions that peremptorily? I don't know. I mean, my beef with McCain has always been more his foreign policy than anything else, because I think that this is a guy who never saw a war he didn't like, and he makes those decisions, very seat of the pants and very snap.
It reminds me in a couple of ways of the current president. There's been reports that he makes decisions based on the last person in the room, whatever the last person in the room says. That is nearly identical to the reports we get out of George Bush. He makes decisions by his gut without checking the facts as well as he should.
Sometimes the last person in the room is God.
And that's even scarier. So you know what? Actually, let me go off of that. Now, Huffington Post broke a story about how she was at the Assembly of God and talked about how Iraq was a mission from God. But I'm going to let that go from my point of view, because whenever they're in church, they always talk about how God is responsible for everything. And she asked for prayers for her.
Well, I don't know. I get into trouble. I have trouble with the whole mission from God formulation. The whole God, our God is bigger than your God. God is on our side.
No, it's very problematic, but I'm so used to it. I feel like every time I
think it's a dangerous thing to get used to. Mm-hmm. I think that we've probably reached the point in the history of civilization when we can say that those sorts of formulations about God's intentions are primitive.
Look, I couldn't agree more with you. That leads me to her pastor, though, because her pastor, obviously Barack Obama had enormous pastor problems. Her pastor, Pentecostal.
And rightly so, by the way. I mean, Reverend Wright is not one of my favorite Americans.
Right. But I'm far more troubled with Governor Palin's pastor, because one of the things he said was Jesus was in a war mode, and we need to be like Jesus in a war mode, and that Jesus asked you to die for him. So if you need to die for Jesus. And I read that, and I think I'm just substitute Allah for Jesus, and it's just something that could have been written by Ayman al-Zawahiri.
Well, and the fact is that in the Quran, what distinguishes the Quran from the New Testament is that Muhammad did pick up the sword. Jesus never did. I mean, for a pastor to say Jesus is in war mode is, like a pastor saying Jesus is in unnatural sex mode or something like that. It's just, this is clearly someone who never actually read the New Testament.
No, but it goes along with the theme of the constant perversion of the Bible by the Republicans. They say that Jesus asked you to get rich. No, he didn't. I read the New Testament. He didn't ask for that.
Jesus wants you to give away all your money.
Right.
Jesus said that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven.
So is this pastor going to be an issue for Sarah Palin, we think?
Well, there's so many issues out there for poor Sarah Palin that I just don't know which ones are going to rise to the surface as the really objectionable ones. It just seems to me that the proper reaction to this pick is for us to be insulted by it. You know, it may turn out that Sarah Palin is an excellent politician and a real stateswoman who sooner or later becomes someone worthy of the presidency or the vice presidency. But it is crystal clear that she is not worthy of it now, that she has absolutely no foreign policy or national security experience, and that she was arrived at in the most hasty and unprepared manner.
We're talking to Joe Klein of Time. Let me ask you about foreign policy. They're hiding her at this point. They haven't done any news conferences at all. They haven't allowed her to talk to the press. Obviously, they're cramming for the exam that's about to come on foreign policy. One, is that in a way of cheating? I know it's a funny way of putting it, but either when they picked her, she was ready or she wasn't. Mm-hmm. It seems like they're kind of loading the deck in a sense. She wasn't ready, but now they're cramming her full of information. I don't think it's going to work because I don't think you can just learn foreign policy in 3 days.
Well, but, I think it might help if John McCain crammed a little bit, and I mean I got into trouble in June for asking him who the actual leader of Iran was, since he kept on insisting that it was Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who has domestic policy responsibilities but no foreign policy or nuclear responsibilities, and he got really angry at me for reminding him of that. But
did he get it or no? Did he get Khamenei or no? Khamenei, however you pronounce it.
Khamenei. No, I mean there was a reason why he was doing. Why he kept on mentioning Ahmadinejad. It was to scare the hell out of my Jewish parents. Because Ahmadinejad is the world's most famous anti-Semite at this point. Right. Powerless one, but an anti-Semite nonetheless.
So, when can the press demand to see the vice presidential pick, or how long can they hide her? I mean, when are they ever going to let her out into the public?
Well, they can hide her for. Listen, he's hiding himself at this point. I don't know whether you saw the interview that he gave Time Magazine in this week's issue.
I did, yeah.
But it was astonishing.
What's wrong with him? What's happening? I mean,
he's kind of ticked off. He thought that he had us. He thought we were his base. Mm-hmm. He thought that he had us in his back pocket. And I will admit to a certain amount of real affection for John McCain. But I'm not going to lay down for anybody. And if he says things that are palpably untrue or kind of foolish, like, victory in Iraq, whatever that means, or that Democrats are in favor of surrender in Iraq, to whom? Well, then I'm going to call him on it. And so the answer to your question is they're going to try and hide her as much as possible. They'll probably roll her out with the most, puffball sort of interviews. I don't know why the name Larry King suddenly comes to mind. But
I'm sure you mean nothing by it.
No, nothing. But I think that they'll be very selective and very careful. I remember with Dan Quayle, they threw him into the fire immediately in 1988, and he had this terrible, embarrassing press conference where he couldn't explain how or why he got his National Guard service exemption from the Vietnam War. They haven't done that with Palin. They learned that lesson. But I remember afterwards, Dan Quayle was sent to campaign in places like Casper, Wyoming. I'm sure that you're not going to see Sarah Palin anywhere near civilization anytime soon.
I think she was in Pittsburgh on the first or the second day, and she's like, "Oh, it's great to be in a different state." Mm-hmm. And you're like, "Wow, of course, you're campaigning for vice president. You're going to be in Pennsylvania." So, look, now there's a lot of news out there, and they've now got the stock market, not the stock, whatever they call that, political stock market, saying that she has about a 13% chance of being withdrawn. Is that kind of talk crazy talk, or is there any chance at all that they go, yeah, wow,
well,
we got to pull it back?
We don't know the full story yet. Mm-hmm. We don't know how many more embarrassments there are down the road, but it would be very, very much unlike John McCain to pull her name back. I mean, he made the choice. He's going to be sticking with it. He claims that she was fully vetted.
We know that's not true.
Of course, it's not true.
Yeah.
So I would take the other side of that wager.
I would too, because I think withdrawing her, no matter how bad she is, withdrawing her would make it worse. It would be an admission, I screwed up, I made the wrong call. I don't think a presidential candidate this day and age can say that.
Right.
I think it would be devastating, probably be the end of the campaign. I heard rumors that he was going to name his cabinet, kind of to compensate for, all right, Palin might not be experienced, but I'm going to bring in Rudy Giuliani and Joe Lieberman and Mitt Romney. One, have you heard anything along those lines? And two, if he does do that, wouldn't that be very possibly a significant mistake, because then you would provide 18 different targets or 12, 13 different targets?
I don't know. I think that a selective revelation of your cabinet might not be a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Although the idea of a cabinet with both Rudy Giuliani and Joe Lieberman in it, to me would send the obnoxiousness needle way off the charts. I think it would be very difficult to hold one's stomach.
Well, what happened to Giuliani here? Well, he was supposed to speak tonight. Where is he? Do we know?
In an undisclosed location. I think that they had to throw President Bush back in tonight.
So maybe he'll come back on Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, who knows? I mean,
maybe he's with Sarah Palin.
I think that he's the kind of. They may have also felt that, after the sweetness and light attempt of serving something larger than yourself as the theme of the convention, that they didn't want to bring out the attack dogs quite so soon.
Oh, right. Rudy was definitely going to attack, and they're going to want to save that for a little bit later as a transition now. So we're talking to Joe Klein of Time. Finally, let's get a sense of the race here. The latest tracking poll has Obama up 50-42. I think that's Gallup, but there are a lot of other polls that have it much closer.
Most of the polls that came out in the last day, ABC, CBS, a whole bunch of them, have Obama up by about 8 or 9 points. And I think that reflects the very strong speech he gave last week. And it will go away after McCain gives a very strong speech this week. I think you have to be prepared for that. He's going to talk about being a POW. He's going to talk about courage and country and never surrender and how he was right about Iraq and so on and so forth. And I think that'll have an impact on the race. I'll start to really pay attention to the polls after we've had a debate or two.
Mm-hmm.
That's where this thing is going to be decided.
And at this convention, they're going to do the POW McCain story, of course. They're going to do the attacking with Giuliani a little bit later. But I know that the Democrats get asked this all the time, and I think it's only fair that the Republicans get asked this. Is there any positive message that the Republicans have? Like, here's what we stand for, and isn't it hopeful and lovely?
Well, it's not going to be 4 more years. I can tell you that.
So.
No, they're going to make their case on strength and lower taxes.
That's it. We're going to the same well.
Yeah, that stuff is. They'll use that stuff until it stops working, and it has been working since Ronald Reagan. Now, I kind of believe that we're getting to the end of the road on those sort of things, because the utilization of the U.S. military has gotten us into a real pickle overseas. And, for the first time in a long time, we're in a position now where we're going to have to really start spending money domestically on infrastructure, alternative energy, and a whole bunch of things like that, if we want to keep a pace with the rest of the world.
When I thought they'd come to the end of the road on that stuff a little before the 2006 election, when I saw a couple of polls that said that people would rather have their taxes raised if it meant you could solve health insurance or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think those kind of targeted tax increases are where we're going to go. And I also think that Obama's plan of having an infrastructure bank where you have these 5 commissioners who make independent judgments on each infrastructure project, so it doesn't get all porked up, is a good one.
That is a good one. That's a solid one. So we'll see how it develops. Frankly, I'm still surprised that this race is even this close, because you got the demographics against John McCain, you got the 8 years of Bush against John McCain, and
you got the demographics in John McCain's favor, because traditionally more older people have voted than younger people. We'll see. I tend to be one of those who thinks that the younger people are going to come out this year, and that these polls are closer than the reality. But
yeah, on the demographics, my main thing is the Hispanic vote. George Bush got 40% of the Hispanic vote and barely won. They're down to about 25% of the Hispanic vote. Everything else being equal, which it isn't. They're more in favor of Democrats. Everything else being equal, it would seem that they would stand no chance losing that large a chunk of the Hispanic vote.
But the Hispanic vote, I think, is less than 10% of the electorate, so it's not all that much. Blacks are about the only demographic group that over-participate. A greater percentage of African Americans vote than any other ethnic group. I think that you can't forget about the guy's race. You can't forget about the fact that his name is Barack Obama.
I keep coming back to that. You're right, because I look at all these different things, and I think the one thing that seems to be the impediment for Barack Obama is the race / name. I think the name is almost as important,
but also
if not
the
more
experience
important.
thing. I mean, he really 4 years in the United States Senate is a pretty slim resume. 4 years ago, he was in the Illinois State Senate. That is, that's asking a lot of people, and I think that therefore he has to prove, when he stands next to John McCain, that he is a plausible president. I think that that's what people are waiting for.
So far he has certainly demonstrated knowledge at least equal to John McCain's on the campaign trail. We'll see how they do in the debates, and then McCain, of course, might have ruined that argument for himself by picking Sarah Palin, who clearly has a lot less experience. And, I've seen him all over TV, all the surrogates. They just can't come up with one foreign policy experience or decision she's had. And that does not bode well for them. But Joe Klein of Time, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
All
right, we'll be right back on the Young Turks.